Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be creating 3 cards for the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge. This week's challenge is texture, and they've encouraged us to use Tim Holtz products if we have them. So here I pulled out my Stampers Anonymous Mini Cats and Dogs set, and I'm stamping these with Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink onto some Bristol Smooth cardstock. So I'm going to create 3 3x3 scenes to stick on the front of my cards today. And now I'm working on getting some textured backgrounds. So there I had trimmed down a piece of MFT Lemon Drop cardstock to 3x3 inches. And I just ran that through my Big Shot using the Tim Holtz Texture Fade Matrix Embossing folder. And next I'm going to use some stencils to create some backgrounds. I've got my Ranger texture paste and I'm mixing in some colors here. I wanted a sort of cement brick color. I started out with Simon Says Stamp Barely Beige, but it wasn't dark enough. Then I added some Lawn Fawn Hippo, which made it a little too gray. And then finally I grabbed some Lawn Fawn Walnut and mixed a little bit of that in. So here I'm just using a little bit of painter's tape on the back of my square, and that is a 3x3 inch square of Bristol Smooth cardstock. And I'm just going to take that paste and slide that over the stencil, and this is the Tim Holtz bricked stencil. And I was a little stingy with my paste there. I barely had enough to cover it, but I was able to make it work. So once I'm happy with that, I do stop the video and I take my stencil and my little piece of acetate that I mix on, as well as my spatula, and I will stop everything and clean those off, because if it dries, it's much harder to get off of what you're working with. Here I've grabbed some Stampin' Up ink, and this is Emerald Envy. I want to create sort of a wallpaper look, and I'm again going to mix that in with some texture paste. I ended up adding a little bit more in because I wanted a darker color. And the stencil I'm using for the background is one of Tim Holtz sets. I think it's actually supposed to be a poinsettia flower, because this comes with some other Christmas themed ones, but it's set number 21. So you get 3 of the smaller ones in that. And again, I did hold my Bristol cardstock down using some painter's tape, and I'm just going to smear this paste all over the top of my stencil. So as I'm letting my backgrounds dry, I'm going to work on my coloring, and I'm just keeping each background off to the side there as I choose my colors to color in the cats and the elements that are going to be a part of the scene. I want to make sure that they're going to match okay. I am again working on Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I'm using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to color everything in. So I went ahead then and fussy cut out all of my images. Here I've got a piece of MFT's Grout Gray cardstock. I trimmed that to be 1 inch wide, and I'm going to attach that using my ATG gun to create sort of a sidewalk next to that brick patterned paper. Next, I'm going to take all of my little scenes and I will get those stuck down using some glue dots. And I chose glue dots because they are so sticky, and I knew if I wanted to mail these, even with those textured backgrounds, I would get a nice stick and I won't have to worry about anything falling off in the mail. I played around with a few different cardstocks thinking maybe I wanted to create a floor on this scene, but in the end I decided to take one of my zig markers and just create a little bit of shading around the cat and the food bowl. So I had originally planned on keeping all of these 3 by 3 inches and then just creating a little bit of a mat when I made the card base to put them on. But I happened to pull this out of my stash and I really liked the size that it was compared to the 3 by 3 inch square. So I decided to give all of my cards a little bit longer colored background. And this I trimmed to 3.5 by 4.25. So the colors I used are Green-Eyed Monster, Limelight, and Pure Plum, and those are all MFT cardstocks. I chose 3 thanks-related sentiments from Heidi Swap, and these are actually part of some of her planner stamp sets. They don't have names, but they are numbers 1126 and 1130. So I went with thanks, thank you, and thankful. I thought these would be really cute to leave the next time someone comes to pet sit for you. Next, I'll attach my scenes to those colored panels, and I'm using some 1/2 inch score tape to do that. I wasn't so worried about the Bristol cardstock as that it really didn't warp very much at all from using the texture paste, but since I had used the embossing folder on the yellow cardstock, I wanted to make sure I had something with a nice firm stick on it. So next I'm going to take those panels and I'm going to place those on top of a Nina card base that I created. I just used my ATG gun for that. And a lot of times it's easier for me to sort of eyeball things and then figure out the measurements afterwards. So what I did was I just took my Nina paper to my trimmer and I grabbed the panel and laid it out, and I realized that 3 3/4 was going to give me a nice white border. And I trimmed and then just scored that in the middle, folded it, and then once I placed the panel on top, I took that to my trimmer and just made sure I had a nice even white border on the edge. So if you want to go ahead and make something this size, it would be 3 3/4 by 4.5 inches is the card base. So you'd cut your paper at 3 3/4 by 9 inches and score it in the middle. Okay, so now I'm working on some inside panels. I pulled out the Simon Says Stamp Kind Flowers stamp set. This was one of the card kit stamps from last year and I absolutely love it. It has the prettiest sentiments and it came with a bunch of different sentiments. So if you didn't get that card kit, you should definitely check out this stamp set because it is something that I know I'm going to use over and over again. So for that first panel, I went with the sentiment, "Your kindness is appreciated," and I stamped that using my Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. And then I took the cat and the fish, just to mirror the cat that was on the front of the card, and I stamped that out using Distress Oxide Twisted Citron. For the next one, I went with the sentiment, "You're my kind of person," and then the cat and the ball of yarn I stamped using Distress Oxide Seedless Preserves. And for the third panel, I went with the sentiment, "You have a kind heart," and I stamped the cat and the fish using Lawn Fawn Minty Fresh ink. And these are all Nina panels that I trimmed down to the same size as the front panel, 3.5 by 4.25. I went ahead and used my ATG gun to attach all of the panels on the inside of the card bases. So that will complete our cards for today. I'm going to hold each one up to the camera so you can hopefully get a good look at the texture I was able to create. This Simon Says Stamp Challenge is going to be open until Wednesday morning, so you've still got time to enter if you're interested. You can find additional photos as well as a full list of supplies at my blog post, linked in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.